Hi, my name is Janica Mastra and this is my presentation on the life of Ella Fitzgerald. For over half a century, she achieved 13 Grammy Awards, entered the Grammy Hall of Fame, and released over 2,000 songs. She dominated jazz during the mid-1900s and stood tall with all the other jazz giants in town. What was her name? The Queen of Jazz, or the First Lady of Song, otherwise known as Ella Fitzgerald. Starting from the very beginning, Fitzgerald was born April 25, 1917 in Newport, Virginia. Her father William and her mother Tempe shortly split after her birth. At some time, Ellie and Tempe moved in with Tempe's longtime partner Joseph De Silva in Yonkers, New York. When Ella's sister Frances was born in 1923, she was comfortable enough to call Joseph her father. At just the ripe age of only 15, Tempe tragically died in a fatal car accident in 1932. With the injuries being too severe to operate on, Ella lost not only her mother, but her best friend. It's widely known that her mother meant a lot to Ella, as in the next 2 years of her life went downhill. In other words, she took it hard. What once used to be a simple girl who liked to go to the park and play sports or practice singing and dancing with her friends, then turned into a troublesome one, a girl whose grades suddenly dropped and skipped school often without a care in the world. She lived with her Aunt Virginia, Tempe's sister, until she suddenly got in trouble with the police. From there, she was forced to go to a reform school and was frequently abused by her caretakers there. After 2 years, she finally escaped and ended up all alone, living amongst the pressures of poverty the Great Depression had to offer. However, this experience and the reform school only motivated her to live a life of prosperity. One day, leaving her fate up to chance, Ella and her friends innocently entered themselves in a raffle to compete in the Apollo Theater's amateur night. Not expecting to be chosen, she put together a dance routine to hopefully dazzle the crowd. However, as she waited backstage right before her turn, she watched two sisters performing a little choreography of their own, recalling them as the danciest sisters around later in life. Once they finished, she was so scared, she awkwardly stepped on the stage, faced with a not-so-welcoming crowd. After she asked the band to play Hoagy Carmichael's Judy, the boos took a halt as she silenced the once rowdy crowd. By the end of the song, the audience was begging and pleading for an encore, and so she went. That was the day she knew she was a natural talent. She walked into the Apollo a nobody and waltzed out a star. That night, she was discovered by Benny Carter. Benny Carter was a saxophonist and arranger for the band that played at the Apollo that night. Once they met, he immediately saw potential in her and helped the launch of her career. They met as many people as possible and entered as many talent shows as possible, all of which she won, growing her mountain of supporters along the way. It wasn't until 1935 that she met drummer and bandleader Chick Webb, when winning the chance to perform with the Tiny Bradshaw Band for a week at the Harlem Opera House. Once she proved herself to the band, she was successfully hired and maintained a wage of $12.50 a week, which was a crazy amount for a woman in music, a musician, at the time being in economic America. Moving on to the next year, she released her first record label, Love and Kisses, under the Decca label in 1936. In addition, she traveled from one prestigious location to the next with Webb's band, like the Harlem Savoy Room, which was also known as the world's most famous ballroom. Becoming independent. On June 16, 1939, mentor Chick Webb unfortunately passed away. Although she mourns, Ella takes over his band and renames it Ella Fitzgerald and Her Famous Band. She plays with them up until 1942, when her solo career really begins. She went on big tours with many jazz greats, including Dizzy Gillespie's tour in 1946. where she met her husband and bassist Ray Brown. After marriage, they adopted a kid by the name of Ray Brown Jr. From there, Ella met Norman Granz, a producer and manager who her husband was working for. As soon as they started talking, sparks just flew. He saw that she had what it took to be a global star. With that being said, a lifelong friendship and a business partnership blossomed. Norman Granz signed her under his new label, Verve, in 1955 and worked together for the rest of her career. Now, I know they look so happy in this photo, but it wasn't always like this in the beginning. Fun fact, it took Norman almost 10 months of persuasion for Ella to finally sign with Verve. Another fun fact was that Norman never had a contract with Ella, or most of his artists for that matter. I quote, "Mutual love and respect was all the contract we needed," I told Ella. "If you wanted the luxury of saying, 'Norman, I quit,' you're off. Go for yourself, but I wanted the luxury of quitting you, too." So we had a nice relationship, says Norman in a 2001 interview. Together, they worked to polish her sound and enhance her reputation. As soon as their first songbook came out in 1956, the rest was history. That songbook alone became one of the top-selling jazz records of all time, number 15 on the Billboard charts, and made over 100,000 in sales in just the first month alone. From there on, she continued her infamous songbook series from 1956 to 1964, as well as selling over 200 albums and 2,000 songs in her career. Pretty impressive. During a time where racism was just so prevalent, it was widely known that Ella and Norman were huge advocates for equal rights. One night in Dallas, when performing for the Jazz at the Philharmonic, police arrested her and other musicians in her dressing room. Given the time, Texas, like every other southern state, was extremely conservative, unfortunately. However, that didn't stop Granz from taking down the black and white bathroom signs and insist for an integrated show. Despite the agreed terms he made with the owner, all the musicians ended up in the jailhouse that night. Ella even remembers that they had the nerve to ask for an autograph. Granz eventually bailed them out, angered that the Southern cops had the audacity to watch the performance but give them little to no respect when forcing them out of the building. Additionally, Marilyn Monroe was one of Ella's biggest celebrity supporters. After learning that Ella wasn't able to book one of LA's most famous nightclubs, the Macambo, Monroe took things into her own hands. Ella states, "She personally called the owner of the Macambo and told him she wanted me booked immediately, and if he would do it, she would take a front table every night." She told him, and it was true, due to Marilyn's superstar status, that the press would go wild. The owner said yes, and Marilyn was there, front table every night. Due to this and the overexposure from the press, Ella reached world recognition, being that she was the first African American to play at the Macambo and never had to play a small club ever again. From there on out, Ella performed on the world's most prestigious stages for years to come. Her velvety voice and perfect pitch brought her all around the world, as well as people of every color and creed to stand as one. She received many awards in her lifetime, with one of her most prized accomplishments being the National Medal of Arts Award, given to her by President Ronald Reagan. Other than her musical career, her deep concern for child welfare was evident in the generous donations she made to organizations for disadvantaged youths. Her contributions were personal to the life she lived after her mother died, being that she was put in foster care, an abusive reform school, and alone on the streets during the Great Depression. Ella received a surplus of awards during her life that pertained to her contributions to music, as well as her role as a civil rights activist and other talent awards. Unfortunately, all good things come to an end. Ella's voice and raw talent served her to live a prosperous life with all the people that she loved. Even though her and her husband divorced in 1952, They still remained good friends as they raised their son. By the time she retired, she had already received a quintuple coronary bypass surgery, as well as replacing a valve in her heart and being diagnosed with diabetes. Due to this, she had to get both of her legs amputated below the knee. Since that surgery, she never fully recovered. With that being said, she spent the last 5 years of her life just relaxing with her family. Deservingly so. 5 years later, though, she died in her home in Beverly Hills. However, her beautiful soul lives on to inspire other jazz youths until this very day.